Chapter 1527. As time passes, the situation is getting worse? After repeating this, Yin Zhaoge's gaze flickered slightly. With the passing of time, has it reached the time for his 6 Dao transformations? Tong Xinlin said in a deep voice. After fighting for decades, the Sword Buddha's condition has become more and more abnormal. From the original extreme stubbornness, it has gradually become manic and bloodthirsty. Hell Dao. Yin Zhaoge pursed his li. The Sword Buddha had transformed into 6 paths. To the outside world, the most dangerous path was the Naraka path. In comparison, while the Asura realm's stubbornness and belligerence, and the Hungry Ghost realm's greed and viciousness, were also very negative, at least there was still room for communication and adjustment. On the other hand, the path of hell, which was violent and bloodthirsty, picked up the butcher's knife and slaughtered living beings, turned the human world into hell, and was like a great Buddha or a great devil, had a much more direct destructive power and threat. No matter if it was when he was the orthodox sword bodhisattva, or when he entered the blessed lands of the White Lotus, the sword bodhisattva would always enter seclusion for 1,000 years before he transformed into the hell Dao. In the past, the central blessed lands of Saha, or the current blessed lands of the White Lotus, would also help him keep an eye on him, preventing him from going berserk and starting a massacre. After all, the blessed lands of the White Lotus valued the power of faith as well. Even after competing against the immortal court for so many years, they only fought against the experts. Very few mortals were affected. Once the Sword Buddha entered the Naraka Dao, it could be said that he had picked up a butcher's knife and immediately became a demon. In fact, they were even more berserk, bloodthirsty, and irrational than many demons of the netherworld. According to the Sword Buddha's original plan, after he descended upon the Jade Spring world as a Buddha, unless the Jade Cauldron cultivated deity was still alive, he could easily bring the immortal trapping sword along with the locals and return to the blessed lands of the White Lotus. However, due to the stubbornness of the Asura Dao, he had wasted decades here with Yin Xintong and Di Qinglian. Time flew by, and the day arrived when the Asura path transformed into the Hell path. His desire to win faded, replaced by a bloodthirsty mania. The Sword Buddha didn't have the mood to continue tangling with Yin Xintong and Di Qinglian. He also didn't intend to bring the Jade Spring world's population back to the blessed lands of the White Lotus. Instead, he wanted to start a massacre and end everything once and for all. Samsara Sword Scripture. Yin Zhaoge put his hand to his forehead. The incarnated beast Dao, the Sword Buddha, who was half asleep and half awake, had always been in closed-door training. Naturally, it was not necessary to mention it. If it was the Sword Buddha, who had transformed into the Celestial Dao, he might have only taken away the immortal trapping sword. Unfortunately, when he came to the Jade Spring world, he wasn't in the Heaven path, but the Asura path. Still, it was precisely because of the Asura Dao's stubbornness and desire for battle that Yin Xintong and Di Qinglian were able to provoke him into sparring with the sword. Otherwise, if it were the human realm or the Hungry Ghost realm, the Sword Buddha would probably forcefully drag everyone back to the blessed lands of the White Lotus. However, now that he had turned into the Hell Dao, everything would only end in an endless battle. Faced with such a situation, Yin Xintong and Di Qinglian were unable to continue slowly dealing with it. The seal that they had secretly prepared was activated. The two of them sacrificed themselves and finally succeeded in sealing the Sword Buddha, who had transformed into the Naraka realm. Although the two of them could not avoid death, they managed to ensure the safety of the Jade Spring world. After Tong Xinlin and Guang Tongzi finished speaking, they sounded a little gloomy. Yin Di closed his eyes, remaining silent. Daoist Qing Zhang let out a long sigh when he heard that. Yao Yunqing, on the other hand, pursed his lips and remained silent. He did not personally experience that calamity. Compared to Daoist Qing Zhang and Tong Xinlin, he wasn't as deeply affected by the Sword Buddha's transformation into the Hell Dao. However, he had also heard about it. Only, he was still unable to let go of his master's death. You make it sound like they sacrificed themselves for our Jade Spring world. However, they were merely seeking their own deaths. Daoist Zhao Jin let out a groan. Yin Di suddenly looked towards him. causing Taoist Zhao Zhen to feel a chill down his spine. However, he still forcefully opened his mouth. Previously, when the Sword Buddha was in the Azura Tao, if the two of them didn't insist on stopping us, the worst-case scenario would have been everyone entering Buddhism. How could the calamity have befallen us? Tong Xinlin and Guang Tongzi looked at Taoist Zhao Zhen in dissatisfaction. Taoist Zhao Zhen's voice was deep. My master's lifespan is nearing its end, and there's no hope for him to enter the profound origin tribulation. While I still have a long lifespan, it's hard for me to break through the bottleneck. I'm stuck in my current realm for the rest of my life. I've long despaired, and I've even given up on the pure profound tribulation. His gaze swept past Yin Zhaoge and Yin Di. It's your business if you and your ancestors aren't willing to enter Buddhism. However, you've obstructed our path as well. Isn't that hateful? Come to think of it, what's so bad about the current Buddhism? Taoist Zhao Zhen had completely dispelled his worries. He loudly said, cultivation is much easier. Regardless of what method you use, you should be able to improve yourself and ascend to a higher realm. No matter how beautiful Taoism's future is, it's nothing more than a mirage if we can't reach it. So what if we choose to abandon Taoism and enter Buddhism? Yin Zhaoge looked at him indifferently. When you first entered the Tao, two paths were placed in front of you. Would you choose my orthodox Taoism, or the heretics of Buddhism? Taoist Zhao Zhen was startled. He wanted to speak but hesitated. Yin Zhaoge didn't look at him anymore. Instead, he looked towards Taoist Qing Zhang. 2097 years ago, when the Sword Buddha first arrived at the Jade Spring world, were you willing to abandon Taoism and enter Buddhism, cultivating in the Maitreya Buddhist scriptures? Naturally, I wasn't willing. If I wasn't forced, no one would choose to enter the blessed lands. However, Taoist Qing Zhang shook his head and sighed. Taoist Zhao Zhen protested. Even if my master wasn't willing back then, now that he has his own thoughts, what right do you have to look down on him? Abandoning Taoism and entering Buddhism is also our business. Yin Zhaoge coldly interrupted him. While it's true that you have the freedom to choose, my ancestors' sacrifice didn't only protect your master's life, but also your ancestors' clansmen's lives. Your so-called freedom of choice is also preserved because of my ancestor and grandmother. Otherwise, what freedom of choice do you have to speak of? If your ancestors were brought to the blessed lands of the White Lotus, you would only be able to walk the path of the heretics of Buddhism ever since you were born. Now you're talking about freedom to me? You don't have to bear any risks, yet you want to reap all the benefits. Who do you think you are? You've already benefited from it, yet you're still trying to act innocent? Yin Zhaoge looked at everyone from the Jade Spring world and suddenly laughed. I'm afraid you still don't know about this. Other than the heretics of Buddhism, our Taoism has its own heretics as well. Ever since the Great Calamity, the two sides have always been at each other's throats, fighting for faith, power, and incense. A small battle occurs every 10 years, and a huge battle occurs every 100 years. Countless experts have perished over the years. However, in the eyes of both sides, they merely expended some cannon fodder. As long as there's sufficient faith power, they would be able to replenish their numbers within a short period of time. Don't even think about being passive when you're in the middle of the battle. Just act. Under the Buddha's light imbued with faith power, it's obvious whether you've done your best or not. He glanced at Taoist Qing Zhang, Taoist Zhao Zhen, and Yao Yunsheng. Among the experts from both sides who were active 2,000 years ago, other than the grand heavenly immortal realm, only less than 30% of those who ascended to the immortal realm managed to survive until now. I wonder how much higher this death rate is compared to your success rate of challenging the profound origin tribulation, or the pure profound tribulation. As for the casualties of those who had yet to ascend to the immortal realm, there's no need to mention it. Taoist Zhao Zhen opened his mouth and wanted to say something. However, Yin Zhaoge said plainly, "Do you think that I'm telling you all this so that you can weigh the pros and cons, and that I'm giving you a chance to decide if you're going to join Buddhism or not? What makes you think that you still have such a chance? I'm just giving you a chance to die." Taoist Zhao Zhen's embarrassment turned into rage. He said hatefully, "So what if you're flaunting your might in front of us? With the seal still present, you're merely a caged bird like us. If the seal is broken, how are you going to face the sword Buddha? Now that Taoism has declined, how are you going to act so arrogantly in front of the blessed lands of Buddhism? The Maitreya Buddha is indeed powerful. However, the sword Buddha, he. Yin Zhaoge raised his hand, and a dark red sword light shot up to the skies. As the skies trembled, the seal's formation runes appeared. Chapter 1528. The seal pattern appeared, emitting a demonic dark red light. The sword will of the celestial trapping sword came out from within. Music Mobile Network Daoist Qing Zhang, Daoist Zhao Zhen, and Yao Yunqing looked on coldly. Wanting to open the seal was not so easy, even if Yin Zhaoge had easily broken through their blood sacrifice technique. Daoist Qing Zhang and the others were only giving it a try, and had no confidence in breaking the seal. Due to fate, the arrival of Yin Zhaoge and Yin Di allowed them to perform the blood sacrifice. Only then did they have some hope. Still, it was just some hope. If the seal could be broken so easily, why would the Jade Spring world be trapped for thousands of years? Tong Xinlin and Guang Tongzi both had complex expressions on their faces, as they wanted to stop Yin Zhaoge. From afar, other people from the Jade Spring world appeared one after another and approached. All of them were shocked. Due to Yin Xintong and Di Qinglian's actions in the past, as well as the sword Buddha and the blessed lands of the White Lotus, the Jade Clear lineage within the Jade Spring world had gradually split into two factions. There were disputes between the two factions from time to time, and the conflicts were getting more and more intense. However, be it Daoist Qing Zhang and the others, or Tong Xinlin and the others, they all acknowledged the sword Buddha's power. Compared to the current situation in the Jade Spring world, where the highest cultivation was a profound immortal, there was no need to doubt the strength of a grand heavenly realm expert who had attained Buddhahood. While Yin Zhaoge seemed to have easily killed Daoist Qing Zhang and the others, he was merely a tranquil profound immortal. How could he contend against a grand heavenly immortal? Therefore, there were many people who tried to dissuade him. Hold it! Don't be reckless. According to common sense, Xian immortals should not have the ability to open the seal. However, Yin Zhaoge's current confident expression still caused everyone's hearts to tremble. Just at this time, Yin Zhaoge flicked his sleeve, a silhouette flying out from within his sleeve, rapidly expanding in size in midair. Everyone focused their eyes, and saw that it was a huge beast with black and white fur that looked like a bear. Mountain centipede? Just as the people of the Jade Spring world recalled the name of a type of demonic beast, recorded in the ancient records, a golden radiance suddenly shone from the back of the gigantic Pishio. The golden light shot straight into the sky. Then, it rapidly outlined and condensed in midair, manifesting an even larger demon monkey. The demonic monkey appeared and instantly stepped on the ground, its head reaching the sky. The vast Jade Spring world actually gave off a feeling that it couldn't contain this huge monkey. Great sage equaling heaven. Everyone carefully looked at the demon monkey's appearance, and a legendary name appeared in their minds, giving everyone a fright. The demonic monkey raised its claws towards the sky. The seal in the sky trembled unceasingly. Streams of light crisscrossed like sharp blades, slicing at the demon monkey's claws. However, all the golden fur on the demon monkey's body stood on end. Rays of golden light circulated, and it actually managed to withstand the crisscrossing dark red sword light. Although the immortal trapping sword was powerful, its main power was currently used to seal the sword Buddha. Pan's golden body of the great sage took the brunt of the attack head-on, his two furry claws reaching deep into the seal. Everyone of the Jade Spring world was dumbfounded. Yin Zhaoge raised his hand and drew something in midair with his finger. Rays of dark red sword lights were sent into the sky. Beside him, Yendi's expression was solemn, as he did not speak a single word, as he too unleashed numerous saber lights, flying into the seal alongside Yin Zhaoge's sword light. The seal in the sky was constantly undergoing changes. As for the golden body of the great sage formed by Pan, it used its own strength to forcefully hold the seal in place, preventing it from resisting Yin Zhaoge's actions. With Yin Zhaoge dispelling the seal, Pan didn't have to face the seal head-on and break through it with brute force. Very quickly, under everyone's astonished gazes, the entire Jade Spring world's sky underwent changes. The sky turned completely dark red. Streams of lights continuously traversed within, and jade radiances could be vaguely seen. Then, these radiances gradually dissipated. The Jade Spring world's sky gradually returned to normal. As the winds and clouds surged, the obstruction that had sealed this world for more than 2,000 years finally dissipated. Not only were Daoist Qing Zhang and the others stunned, even Tong Xinlin, Guang Tongzi, and the others were rendered speechless. Their faces were filled with confusion. Currently, only the area above the Golden Cloud Mountain was still flickering with dark red radiances. Under the suffocating aura, two silhouettes gradually appeared from within the red radiances. A longsword and a person. The longsword's design was simple and unadorned. However, it was the source of the dark red sword lights. From within, a desolate aura of time flowing to its end could be felt. The void surrounding the longsword was slowly collapsing, causing everything around it to move closer to it. It was as if the spatial plane it was in was heading towards destruction. When everyone looked at the ancient sword, they felt that they were in a different spatial plane. They were infinitely far away from it, and no matter how close they got, they couldn't touch it. One of the immortal exterminating four swords, the immortal trapping sword. A sword appeared behind the demon monkey, pointing straight at his back. A sword appeared above the heads of Yin Zhaoge and the others, resembling a heavenly tribulation descending. Next to the immortal trapping sword, a hand flashed and instantly appeared close to grab the ancient sword. The sword Buddhas that appeared at the same time were all real and not illusions. This was the unique miraculous ability of Grand Heavenly Realm experts. Duo. The demon monkey let out a long howl and flipped its body in the air. Instantly, it was as if countless demon monkeys had appeared in the void. There were as many sword Buddhas as there were demon monkeys. The dazzling phenomena caused Yin Zhaoge and the others to feel as though they were in a dream for a time. Then in the next moment, both of them disappeared. In midair, there was still a giant golden-furred ape and a sword-wielding monk facing off. The great sage equaling heavens. As expected of the great sage equaling heavens, the sword Buddha sighed. Despite having fallen to the grand virtual realm, he still retained many of his grand heavenly realm prowess. At the very least, he could still unleash his prowess. Currently, he was no longer seated on the lotus platform. Instead, he stood up and stood on the white lotus. With a sword in hand, his gray monk robes fluttered in the wind, making him look more like a majestic swordsman. Yin Zhaoge appeared on the shoulder of Pan's golden body of the great sage. As expected of the sword Buddha, even after transforming into the human realm, he's still one of the top experts in the blessed lands of the White Lotus. When the sword Buddha transformed into the six paths of samsara, his combat prowess was the strongest when he was in the heaven realm, Asura realm, and hell realm. The human realm, animal realm, and hungry ghost realm were slightly weaker. Even so, his strength was still one of the top experts among the heretic grand heavenly immortals. After all, before entering the heretic realm and ascending to the grand heavenly realm, as the sword Bodhisattva, he was one of the top experts among the orthodox Buddhism experts. As a bodhisattva in the past, how could he be easy to deal with? Unfortunately, he still couldn't do anything against Yin Zhaoge's golden body of the great sage. A golden body of the great sage could easily suppress a heretic grand heavenly immortal, like the great king of inspiration. If not for the origin heavenly tribulation's obstruction, even killing the great king of inspiration wouldn't be an issue. Even if the victorious fighting Buddha was injured, he could still suppress a golden body of the great sage. This was due to his innate strength. While the sword Buddha was strong, he was still a heretic. No matter what, his strength couldn't compare to the victorious fighting Buddha, who had attained enlightenment in Buddhism. Who are you? The sword Buddha's gaze swept across Yin Zhaoge and Yin Di. Chapter 1530. The Jade Spring world's masses were unfamiliar with the young monk, who sat atop the white lotus. He wore a kasaya, yet still had a troubled look on his face. However, Yin Zhaoge and the others might be more familiar with him than the previous sword Buddha. The sword son of the six paths, Chu Su, the previous sword Buddha's direct disciple. He could also be considered as the new sword Buddha. Currently, he was one of the top-notch existences amongst the blessed lands of the White Lotus's Buddha-level experts. He could even contend against orthodox Buddhist Grand Heavenly Realm experts. Master, it's good that you're safe. After Chusu appeared, he stood up from the White Lotus and put his palms together towards the sword Buddha. This disciple has arrived a few decades late. My apologies. As he spoke, he unsheathed his long sword. 6 colored sword lights radiated, forming a wheel of colors. As the sword lights revolved, time and space seemed to distort. Tangible existences became illusory, and willingly entered the sword lights along with the revolutions of the sword lights. Gao Qingxian frowned, and thrust the immortal slaughtering sword forward. Strands of black qi lingered around the ancient sword. Even if the immortal slaughtering sword was ferocious, Gao Qingxuan's mind went blank after being sucked in by Chu Su's sword lights. An illusory world seemed to have appeared in front of her. The 6 paths of samsara were all presented, and Gao Qingxian felt like she was about to be sucked into one of them. That place was pitch black, filled with bloodlust and brutality. It instilled the desire to kill and destroy everything within one's heart. It was the infernal realm. The new sword Buddha surpasses his master. Gao Qingxian guarded her mind and tried her best to stabilize her soul. Although the sword son of the 6 paths, Chu Su's Buddhist cultivation was learned from the previous sword Buddha. He had opened up a whole new world with the sword Buddha's reincarnation sword scripture as a foundation. Compared to the sword Buddha transforming himself into the 6 paths of samsara, Chu Su separated himself from the outside world and slayed devils, trapping his opponents into samsara. The greater the accumulated karma of his opponents, the stronger Chu Su's sword momentum would be. As such, he often had shocking achievements of defeating those stronger than him, which no one dared to underestimate. Against opponents weaker than him, Chu Su's sword momentum wouldn't be as unique. However, against those weaker than him, he could directly suppress them with his strength. He didn't need to resort to any mystical techniques. Only, with Gao Qingxian wielding the immortal slaughtering sword and other powerful foes beside her, Chu Su couldn't suppress her with his aura. Even so, Gao Qingxuan's soul would immediately be sent into the 6 paths of reincarnation. If she didn't react appropriately, she would instantly perish. The immortal slaying sword in her hand was one of the most vicious weapons in the world. It had taken countless lives, and had accumulated a lot of karma. Therefore, the moment it came into contact with the sword, it was as if it was going to be sucked into the hell Dao. Gao Qingxian retracted her gaze, concealing her bloodlust, mania, and other negative emotions. Sword qi from the immortal slaughtering sword extended outwards. It was not just the sword intent of the immortal slaughtering sword manual. The sword intents of the other 3 sword arts of the prime clear lineages, immortal exterminating 4 swords, were also present. As Gao Qingxuan's sword lights shook, the immortal exterminating 4 swords were unleashed simultaneously. Although it wasn't as powerful as the chaos extinguishing origin scripture, it still displayed the scene of doomsday. It was as if a formation had been established, with the intent of the doomsday annihilation faintly appearing. With the immortal slaughtering sword in hand, the refined immortal slaughtering sword manual could naturally unleash its full power. However, in order to prevent Chu Su's sword intent from devouring the infernal Dao, Gao Qingxian decisively changed her move. If she only used the immortal slaughtering sword manual, she would mainly use the immortal slaughtering sword to unleash its full power. Currently, she was using the immortal slaughtering sword to activate Gao Qingxuan's own strength. Gao Qingxuan's eyesight, judgment, control, and confidence in herself were all fully displayed in this sword. Even though the sword lights weren't bright, their momentum was terrifying. In the dead and withered infernal Dao, magma overflowed, and deathly aura permeated the area. Gradually, cracks began to appear. At this moment, infernal Dao seemed to be welcoming its demise. After the infernal Dao's power dissipated, the 6 paths of samsara reappeared. However, under Gao Qingxuan's and the immortal slaughtering sword lights, everything began following the footsteps of the infernal Dao. In the human realm, the mortals wailed as if they were facing the end of the world. In the animal realm, snakes, insects, rats, and ants were all agitated. Many beasts howled in a frenzy. Similarly, it was a scene of doomsday. In the Azura realm, the figures fighting against each other became even more combative and stubborn. In the Hungry Ghost realm, the billions of malicious ghosts became even more vicious. Their faces twisted in pain. Just a single glance at them would suffocate anyone, leaving them cold. Even the dignified and holy individuals of the Heaven realm became filthy, their hair wilting, and their bodies stinking. It was as if they had gone through the heavenly decay. At this moment, the entire 6 paths of samsara seemed to be approaching its end, welcoming the true Dharma-ending calamity. The world fell into silence. As a result, the terrifying suction force targeting Gao Qingshuan's soul weakened. Chu Su said plainly, "If that's the case, we should first deal with the heretics before discussing about splitting the swords. Otherwise, if one of the swords were to fall into your hands, it's unknown if we could even leave this place alive." Needless to say, the human realm formed by the Sword Buddha's incarnation engulfed Wang Guan and the percussion Heavenly Lord. Meanwhile, Chu Su's sword light was equally sharp. Wang Guan yawned. "How is that possible? I don't cultivate in the sword. Even if I obtain the sword, I would only bring it back to the immortal court. Unlike you two, who immediately became even more powerful after obtaining the sword." The void in front of him suddenly shattered like an illusory realm. Wang Guan and the percussion Heavenly Lord's figures vanished, and the chi of mundane swept through the air. Their figures appeared on the other side, and did not fall into the human realm. The percussion Heavenly Lord distanced himself from the immortal trapping sword, while Wang Guan arrived beside it. In recent years, the heretic's strength had grown too quickly. "They're making use of the chance to fight against you," Wang Guan said. "Do you still want to give them a chance?" The percussion Heavenly Lord said, "Let's deal with these heretics first. Then, we'll talk about the ancient sword." As he spoke, he waved his palm and slammed it towards Yan Zhaoge and the others who were in the human realm. Taoist Zhao Zhen, Yao Yunqing, and the others who were captured by Yan Zhaoge were currently struggling madly. Everyone had fallen into the human realm. Naturally, there was no difference in strength. This made them want to escape. "Everything is just like a bubble. You didn't really bring us immortals down to the mundane realm." Yan Zhaoge's gaze turned cold. "You dare to come here and cause a ruckus?" He took a deep breath. Chaos arose within his body, and sword lights surged within his eyes. After being engulfed by this sword light, Yan Zhaoge had already transcended from the mundane realm, returning to the 9 heavens. As a tranquil, profound immortal, I can't break through the Buddha's cultivation. However, you've transformed into the human realm, and it's no longer a Buddha's technique. The grand heavenly immortal splendor can't dispel my sword intent into nothingness. Even Taoist Zhao Zhen and Yao Yunqing, who were captured by him, felt the same. However, in the next moment, the surging sword lights slashed down on their heads, instantly causing them to fall back to the mundane realm. This feeling was different from falling into the human realm formed by the Sword Buddha, and being tainted by the aura of the mundane realm. Instead, they seemed to have truly fallen out of the immortal realm. Their cultivation and efforts had turned into water, causing them to revert back to the martial saint realm. In Taoist Zhao Zhen and Yao Yunqing's eyes, Yan Zhaoge seemed to be situated high up in the sky, as if he didn't exist in the same world as them. As the sword lights descended, Taoist Zhao Zhen and the others merely received it along the way. Remember, Taoist Zhao Zhen and the others. Chapter 1532. Chu Su, Wang Guan, Percussion Heavenly Lord, and the others frowned upon seeing Yan Zhaoge breaking free from the mortal realm and returning to the 9 heavens. This sword art. While the few grand heavenly realm experts were paying attention to Yan Zhaoge's fallen deity sword, they were more concerned about the influence of this sword art than its current might. No matter how strong the fallen deity sword was, Yan Zhaoge's profound immortal cultivation couldn't possibly defeat the grand heavenly realm experts like them. The reason he was able to escape from the Sword Buddha's mortal realm was because the Sword Buddha's current state was unique. To a certain extent, he had lost the miraculousness of a grand heavenly realm expert, and the banishing deity sword happened to counter the profundity of the Sword Buddha's mortal realm. Moreover, It only allowed him to break free from the mortal realm and couldn't harm the sword Buddha's foundation. Yin Zhaoge knew this better than anyone else. As such, his target had never been Chu Su Wang Guan or the others. Torrential sword lights surged downwards. His target was the Jade Cauldron cadaver that no one paid attention to. The Jade Cauldron cultivated deity was one of the few great sword cultivators in Taoism's history. However, no matter if it was the sword Buddha Chu Su or the others, they could all tell that this jade clear bigwig had truly perished. His cadaver didn't leave any traps behind. The sword Buddha was sealed by the Jade Cauldron cadaver and the immortal trapping sword because of Yin Xintong and Di Qinglian's blood sacrifice. While the Jade Cauldron cadaver still seemed to possess mystical abilities, Chu Su, Wang Guan, and the others didn't need to pay attention to it. Its importance and threat were far inferior to the immortal trapping sword. They were also wary of Yin Zhaoge and the others having thoughts of blood sacrifice again. They were secretly on guard. However, Yin Zhaoge's fallen deity sword slashing towards the Jade Cauldron cadaver was out of their expectations. The percussion Heavenly Lord's palm seemed to be targeting Yin Zhaoge and the others. However, he still had the intention of targeting the sword Buddha and Chu Su. However, at this moment, his palm force suddenly converged and surged like a dragon, pouncing towards Yin Zhaoge and the Jade Cauldron cadaver that he didn't care about previously. He wanted to take advantage of the situation and deal with Chu Su and Yin Zhaoge at the same time. However, he had already given up. Now he wanted to deal with the unexpected changes that were beyond his control. As the percussion Heavenly Lord made his move, the rumbling sound of a drum resounded. A horrifying aura, akin to the pressure of Mount Tai, descended upon Yin Zhaoge and the Jade Cauldron cadaver. In almost an instant, Yin Zhaoge felt that his breathing wasn't smooth. His body that had just broken free from the human realm formed by the sword Buddha became stiff and numb again. Although the percussion Heavenly Lord was a heretic grand heavenly realm and was not as strong as Chu Su, Wang Guan, the sword Buddha, and the others, he was still a grand heavenly realm after all. He was not someone that any profound immortal could fight alone. Before his power had truly come into contact, Yin Zhaoge's sword light, that chopped towards the Jade Cauldron cadaver, already showed signs of dissipating. Taoist Zhaojin laughed when he saw that. You'll end up like us in the end. However, at this moment, the gigantic demon monkey that was surrounded by the mortal world suddenly raised its head to the sky and roared. As it let out a long howl, the demonic monkey tilted its head, and a small stick flew out of its ear. The small rod grew in the wind, and instantly turned into a huge wishful golden rod. It wasn't an illusion created by his own power. It was the true Rui Jingu Bang. Yin Zhaoge had wreaked havoc in the immortal court and fused the three golden bodies of the great sage, manifesting the true form of the great sage equaling heavens. The victorious fighting Buddha had no choice but to manifest his demon form and take out this treasure to face his enemies. In the end, the victorious fighting Buddha and the Buddha of Sandalwood Merit managed to escape unscathed. However, the great sage equaling heaven's true Rui Jingu Bang, the sea-stabilizing divine metal treasure, fell into Yin Zhaoge's hands. Although Yin Zhaoge only had Pan accompanying him this time, the golden body of the great sage was carrying the Rui Jingu Bang. As baleful aura surged, the horrifying metal rod that could shatter the clouds fell into the palm of the demon monkey formed by Pan. Boundless demonic chi instantly grew crazily, as if it was boundless. The demonic chi and baleful aura were too tyrannical and vicious. They condensed into a tangible form and started shattering the mortal world, turning the sword Buddha's mortal world into a barren land. Grow! 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 As the demon monkey roared, he wielded the rod with a single hand. His figure seemed to have become infinitely huge, blocking the percussion Heavenly Lord's way. The percussion Heavenly Lord's palm landed on the demon monkey's head. The demon monkey shook his head and acted as if he didn't feel anything. He grinned at the percussion Heavenly Lord and swung his rod. Wherever the metal rod passed by, the cosmic void collapsed. Streams of radiances converged towards the rod's head and advanced along with the metal rod's movements, forming an existence akin to a galaxy. The percussion Heavenly Lord's figure was instantly shattered. As if a mirror had shattered, the scene within the void turned into fragments and scattered everywhere. Wang Guan let out a groan. His body trembled, and his face instantly lost its color. The percussion Heavenly Lord's figure reappeared on the other side. He only managed to escape, due to Wang Guan's help. However, his entire body was filled with scars. He was like a porcelain that was about to shatter, and he was on the verge of collapsing. Chu Su's expression changed. The true Ru Yi Jingu Bang. How did it end up in his hands? Naturally, the blessed lands of the White Lotus had a rough understanding of the immortal quartz war. They even knew that Yin Zhaoge possessed 3 golden bodies of the Great Sage, which might even manifest the Great Sage equaling heaven's true body. However, they weren't aware of the exact details. They weren't aware that the victorious fighting Buddha had lost the Ru Yi Jingu Bang during that battle. It was the Great Sage equaling heaven's ferocious weapon, which traveling monk Sun used during his journey to the west. Similar to the immortal exterminating 4 swords, it was a divine weapon capable of harming grand heavenly realm experts. In the past, countless heavenly soldiers and demon race bigwigs were slain by it. Since he brought it here, does that mean that the Tai Nirvana Heavenly Lord's attack was just a feint? Wang Guan shook his head and said to Chu Su, "There's no point in saying anything else. Obstruct him for a while. At most, he would only last for a few breaths' time." As he spoke, a mirror appeared in Wang Guan's hand. The mirror's radiance shone upon the demon monkey that was wielding the Ru Yi Jingu Bang. Seeing that his master, the sword Buddha, had become the demon monkey's primary target, Chu Su didn't retreat and slashed with his sword. The 2 top-notch grand heavenly realm experts of the new generation, after the great calamity, joined forces for the first time in their lives. At the same time, the sword Buddha, who was facing the Ru Yi Jingu Bang's sharpness, mustered up his remaining courage and unleashed the human realm's strength to its limits. The 3 grand heavenly realm experts joined forces and didn't clash head-on against the golden body of the Great Sage, wielding the Ru Yi Jingu Bang. Instead, they continued with their previous strategy of manifesting the human realm and trapping their enemies. This way, they could prevent Feng Yunsheng and Gao Qingxian from escaping. Otherwise, the 3 of them were already in grave danger when facing the demon monkey wielding the Ru Yi Jingu Bang. How could they care about the other enemies? Their main goal was to stall for time. Wang Guan's judgment wasn't wrong. Wielding the Ru Yi Jingu Bang would greatly reduce the time needed for Pan Pan to manifest the golden body of the Great Sage. Moreover, his recovery speed would be slow as well. Hence, they were extremely cautious when using this technique. As long as the 3 heretic experts could persist until Pan Pan's strength was exhausted, the situation would still turn for the better. However, they couldn't be bothered with Yin Zhaoge anymore. Yin Zhaoge remained calm. With one hand, he pinched the dumbfounded Taoist Zhao Zhen and Yao Yunqing to death. His other hand continued his previous actions and slashed towards the Jade Cauldron cadaver with the fallen deity sword. Chapter 1533. With the Rui golden cudgel in his hand, the demon monkey's demonic qi surged to the skies, constantly cleansing the mortal qi surrounding him. The surging demonic qi was unleashed, shattering the sword Buddha's human realm. The battle between the 2 unavoidably affected the Jade Spring world. The sword Buddha's human realm was already constantly assimilating the Jade Spring world's human realm. As the 2 forces clashed, the world started distorting and fracturing. Only the sword Buddha, Chu Su, Wang Guan, Percussion Heavenly Lord, and the others couldn't care less about this. Due to the golden body of the Great Sage, Tong Xinlin, Guang Tongzi, and the others wouldn't be frozen by the sonorous voice of the Great Tao. Chu Su and the others weren't targeting them. Tong Xinlin and the other Jade Spring World martial art practitioners all fled. Otherwise, the shockwaves from the 2's battle would claim their lives. The sword Buddha's human realm laws prevented them from escaping. Fortunately, the group of heretic experts were all focused on the demon monkey, allowing Tong Xinlin and the others some freedom. Some fled outside the Jade Spring world, while others tried their best to stabilize the Jade Spring world space and protect the mortals here. Chu Su, Wang Guan, and the others couldn't be bothered about this, as they were fully focused on the demon monkey. As such, they could only watch as Yin Zhaoge slashed the Jade Cauldron Cadaver's fallen deity sword. After being struck by this sword, the Jade Cauldron Cadaver's surface emitted rays of brilliance. It seemed warm yet cold at the same time. No wounds could be seen on the cadaver's surface, but the brilliance gradually dimmed. Upon seeing this, everyone came to a realization. With Yin Zhaoge's current cultivation, the fallen deity's sword was indeed capable of defeating a grand heavenly immortal. However, the Jade Cauldron cultivated deity had already perished, leaving behind only his cadaver. While the cadaver's sturdiness was comparable to divine weapons, and even a grand heavenly immortal expert wouldn't be able to destroy it, it was still a lifeless husk. The fallen deity's sword could reduce it to the grand virtual realm. Yin Zhaoge looked at the Jade Cauldron cadaver, and a white jade dagger appeared in his hand. It originated from Taoist Qing Zhang. He took a deep breath and broke the white jade dagger into two. Then he reversed the broken dagger and pierced it into his own chest. While the sword had pierced his vitals all the way to the hilt, no blood flowed from the wound, and Yin Zhaoge's expression was as per usual. He drew a talisman on the surface of the other half of the broken sword and threw it to the Jade Cauldron's cadaver. The broken white jade dagger turned into a jade light and fused with the remains of the Jade Cauldron. Within Yin Zhaoge's eyes, innumerable runes flickered like streams of light. At the same time, perfected being Yu Ding's cadaver shuddered as well. His eyes suddenly opened and countless runes flashed in his pupils. Then, the Jade Cauldron cadaver raised its arm and opened its palm. A dark red light flashed in its palm. The immortal trapping sword hovering in the void also flashed with a red light and disappeared on the spot. Without any delay, the ancient sword had already appeared in the hands of the Jade Cauldron cadaver. Yin Zhaoge was currently in the profound immortal realm. Although he was strong and knew many secret arts, unless he performed a blood sacrifice with his life as the price, it would be difficult for him to control the immortal trapping sword or activate the Jade Cauldron cadaver. Even if he could, he wouldn't be able to unleash its true might. However, with a slight turnaround, the impossible became possible. Although the Jade Cauldron cadaver's level had temporarily reverted to the grand virtual realm, as the immortal trapping sword's final owner, the sword was already in his hand before the immortal trapping sword was refined by others. Even if it wasn't as mighty as the grand heavenly realm, under the sword's intense activation, the immortal trapping sword's surface surged with red radiances and permeated the entire cosmos. Wherever the sword lights went, the Jade Spring world's damaged boundaries would be repaired, temporarily preventing this world from being damaged. At the same time, innumerable sword lights seemed to be everywhere, slashing towards Chu Su, Wang Guan, and the others. The immortal trapping sword's surroundings shone with red radiances. Under this sword, even a grand heavenly realm expert wouldn't be able to avoid it. When the Jade Cauldron cadaver opened his eyes, Wang Guan let out a long sigh. He no longer looked like the sleepy person he used to be. For the first time, he became spirited and looked at Yin Zhaoge deeply. "There's nothing we can do. Let's run." Wang Guan tried to stop Yin Zhaoge. However, the moment he was distracted, the demon monkey wielding the Ruyi golden cudgel roared and leaped up. Wang Guan could only shake his head helplessly. He rotated the mirror light and kept the heavily injured percussion heavenly lord. Then, he immediately rushed towards the outside world. Under the effects of the immortal trapping sword, not only did it stabilize the Jade Spring world, it was also continuously destroying the sword Buddha's human realm. The human realm became more and more ethereal, losing the human realm's intent. As such, the sword Buddha's human realm started disintegrating. The demon monkey rushed out first and swung the Ruyi golden cudgel towards the sword Buddha's head. The illusory human realm completely shattered, and the sword Buddha's figure reappeared. His complexion was pale, and blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. He wanted to escape, but streaks of dark red sword lights had already entangled him. Previously, when he transformed into the human realm, he had joined forces with Yin Zhaoge and the others. Now that he couldn't trap the enemy, he was trapped in the enemy's camp. The immortal trapping sword, immortal slaughtering sword, and cold sun divine saber immediately attacked the sword Buddha. Chu Su wanted to save his master. However, what welcomed him was the ferocious Ru-Yi golden cudgel. Even with Chu Su's extraordinary prowess, he couldn't withstand this peerless weapon's sharpness. He wasn't willing to dodge. He forcefully used his exquisite swordsmanship in an attempt to dispel the Ru-Yi golden cudgel's ferocious might. He risked suffering some injuries to open up a path for his master and escape together with the sword Buddha. However, the demon monkey didn't just have divine strength. While the Ru-Yi golden cudgel's might was overwhelming, its transformations were also extremely intricate. It was stronger than Chu Su's. Even if he focused on dealing with it, he would still have to fight a bitter battle, let alone being distracted. As the sword and the cudgel clashed, Chu Su's longsword was almost sent flying. He only managed to stabilize himself by a hair's breadth. Just as he wanted to calm down and deal with the demon monkey, the sword Buddha on the other side couldn't withstand it anymore. Previously, when he transformed into the human realm, his sword Dao was broken, and he was heavily injured. Now that he was facing the immortal trapping sword and immortal slaughtering sword's attacks, he was in a perilous situation. While Feng Yunxing was in the grand virtual realm, her saber intent was too mystical and vicious. It wasn't obvious before. Now that the sword Buddha was injured, he felt that his sword Dao was showing signs of degeneration as Feng Yunxing's saber descended. 2,000 years ago, little junior apprentice sister and Taoist Yin perished here in order to obstruct you. Gao Qingxian said in a deep voice. Today, I shall slay you in the same place, to comfort their souls in heaven. Black aura coiled around the immortal slaughtering sword. With an earth-shattering momentum, it slashed towards the sword Buddha. The immortal trapping sword's red radiance flickered, similarly covering the heavens and earth. Together with the immortal slaughtering sword, a red-black vortex was formed, devouring the sword Buddha. Haste! The sword Buddha raised his sword to defend against the terrifying attack that could destroy the heavens and earth. However, at this moment the demon monkey, who had forced Chu Su to retreat, turned around and swung his cudgel. The sword Buddha, who no longer had the strength to defend himself, had his head crushed by the Ru-Yi golden cudgel. Chapter 1534. The sword Buddha, who was even more ancient than the Buddha of sandalwood merit and the victorious fighting Buddha, established the lineage of the sword for Buddhism, couldn't even withstand the Ru-Yi golden cudgel's attack. The initially sturdy golden body of Buddhism instantly shattered. After being sealed for 2,000 years, the moment he was freed, he was faced with the fate of perishing. My fate. The sword Buddha's golden body shattered. Before he breathed his last, he let out a disappointed sigh. After a sigh, his body gradually disintegrated, transforming into streams of air that lingered around. As the colorful auras lingered, they transformed into a huge black hole. The center of the black hole was deep and heavy, while the periphery seemed to be divided into 6 worlds. The heavenly realm, human realm, hell realm, Asura realm, animal realm, and hungry ghost realm. The 6 paths of reincarnation appeared together. The sword Buddha, who had transformed into the human realm, seemed to have transformed into reincarnation the moment he perished, wanting to drag the surrounding existences into it as well. The Jade Spring world, which was initially stabilized by the immortal trapping sword light, started trembling. As time and space distorted, it seemed like it was about to be sucked into the black hole of reincarnation. The humongous demon monkey bared his teeth and smiled. He lifted the Ru-Yi golden cudgel and slammed it downwards. The iron cudgel filled the reincarnation, filling up the black hole. It was even heavier and more vigorous than the black hole's center. The divine metal treasure, that once stabilized the heavenly river's circulation, and the myriad heavens transformation, also stabilized the sword Buddha's 6 paths of reincarnation. Chu Su couldn't save him in time. As he watched the sword Buddha's slew transforming into reincarnation, his originally pale face lost all traces of blood. His expression was emotionless as he sheathed his sword, Namo Sword King Buddha. After chanting his master's official Buddhist name, Chu Su retreated and drifted far away. Although the immortal trapping sword light obstructed their path, Yen Zhaoge and the others' attention was focused on stabilizing the sword Buddha's 6 paths of reincarnation. With Chu Su's strength he could easily escape if he wanted to. The golden body of the great sage wielded the Rui golden cudgel and forcefully suppressed the sword Buddha's world of reincarnation. The black hole gradually disappeared, and the chaotic six paths auras calmed down. Yin Zhaoge and the others stood quietly where they were, not speaking as they looked at the scene before them. Junior apprentice Sister D, Taoist Yin, may you rest in peace. After a long while, Gao Qingxian murmured softly. Yin Zhaoge and Feng Yinxing both had solemn looks on their faces as they lowered their heads slightly. The six paths of reincarnation disappeared, and the golden body of the great sage kept the Rui Jingu Bang. His body disintegrated into rays of golden light and descended. Pan Pan's figure reappeared, the golden light retracting into the tattoo on the back of his shoulder blade. His figure shrunk to the point where he was no larger than a human palm. Jumping into Yin Zhaoge's palm, he directly sprawled down and fell into a deep sleep. You lazy thing, not liking to move at all. This time, it's really been hard on you. Yin Zhaoge curled his fingers and Pan Pan disappeared. While Pan Pan had expended a great deal of energy due to wielding the Rui golden cudgel, Yin Zhaoge and the others weren't afraid of Chu Su, Wang Guan and the others returning. The sword Buddha had perished, and the drum heavenly lord had lost his ability to fight due to his injuries. While Chu Su and Wang Guan were strong, Yin Zhaoge could only rely on the jade cauldron cadaver to wield the immortal trapping sword. Together with Feng Yinxing and Gao Qingxian, who wielded the immortal slaughtering sword, they might not be able to emerge victorious. However, they could still hold their ground and defend themselves. What I'm worried about is them contacting more helpers and making a comeback. Feng Yinxing said, especially the immeasurable heavenly lord and the future Buddha. Yin Zhaoge pulled out the broken white jade shortsword from his chest. Streams of lights flickered continuously on the surface of the broken sword, as if it would shatter at any moment. They can't find too many helpers. Yin Zhaoge let out a long sigh. On the other hand, something unexpected happened to my North Ocean clone. Gao Qingxian and Feng Yinxing were startled upon hearing his words. In order to attract the enemy's attention, Yin Zhaoge had faked news regarding the Tai Nirvana, Heavenly Lord, in an attempt to incite a conflict between the two heretics using the humanly essenced stone fragment that might be in the Tai Nirvana Heavenly Lord's possession. Yin Zhaoge wasn't sure if his plan would succeed. He merely hoped to divert the enemy's attention and buy more time and space for them to search for the immortal trapping sword. Out of consideration, Yin Zhaoge's North Ocean clone, who possessed the golden body of the great sage, was also sent to create a facade to increase the credibility of the situation. However, there was an unexpected change on the other side. It was supposed to be a facade, but it seemed like it had turned into reality. The reason was because Yin Zhaoge had attracted the immortal court, blessed lands of the White Lotus, Western Pure Lands, and the demon race's experts out of their seclusion. Yin Zhaoge, the incongruence Divine Mother, and the others didn't have any actual clues regarding the Tai Nirvana Heavenly Lord. They were merely trying to deceive others. In the beginning, the few heretics held back. However, they were merely probing for information. Let's see if we can locate Taoist Brother Eastern Extreme's whereabouts. The incongruence Divine Mother's voice became gloomy. Yin Zhaoge's North Ocean clone also looked far away and regained his silence. Within the boundless void, Yin Zhaoge, Feng Yinxing, Yin Di Gao Qingxian, and the others brought along the immortal trapping sword and returned to the awakened sky cosmos. Along the way, everyone remained silent after hearing Yin Zhaoge's narration. There's another possibility regarding the scene within the jade door, said Yin Di with a deep voice. After a moment of silence, Yin Zhaoge nodded and said, the other possibility is that the jade door's construction wasn't done by a single person. Only, in order to obtain the final result, an internal conflict broke out among the group. This possibility is relatively low. After all, internal strife would only result in everyone's efforts being in vain before they even succeeded. Yin Di said slowly, the few suspects are all Taoism's pinnacle bigwigs. Under normal circumstances, they wouldn't commit such a mistake. However, a person's heart is unpredictable. It's hard to say now. Perhaps, Only the people within the jade door are aware of the truth? After letting out a sigh, Yin Zhaoge's gaze turned calm. However, this doesn't affect our path. Beside him, Feng Yunxing smiled. Yin Di and Gao Qingxian also revealed a faint smile. Their gazes were calm and resolute. No matter what, if the battle between the two heretics intensifies, it's naturally a good thing for us. The more intense the battle, the better. The longer they fight, the better. Yin Zhaoge laughed lightly. While the pill hall was great, and the awakened sky cosmos was hidden, if Dao Realm bigwigs were to focus on searching for them, even if Yin Zhaoge and the others remained hidden, they would still face immense pressure. The awakened sky cosmos could only last for a long time if their enemies held each other back. This was why Yin Zhaoge had been plotting against them. Only by plotting against them would they be safe. Now that the outcome was better than expected, Yin Zhaoge and the others could finally let out a sigh of relief. While Yin Zhaoge let out a sigh of relief, the others weren't. When Wang Guan brought the percussion Heavenly Lord back to the Immortal Court's Heavenly Palace, the person welcoming them frowned. How did it end up like this? They brought the Ruyi Golden Cudgel. Wang Guan yawned. The immortal trapping sword has fallen into the hands of those heretics. He raised 2 fingers. The heretics already have 2 of them. Chapter 1541. Ever since the Green Sky Mountain's Grave Thunder Palace's Palace Lord Lu, and the Bright Connection Valley's Madame Yen, your master is the 3rd human exalt to push open the immortal door. Mengwan smiled. Ever since the aged gold, earth and water devil's chaos, Yin Zhaoge wreaked havoc in the immortal court, and the immortal slaughtering and immortal trapping swords returned to the 3 clear lineage. While the awakened sky cosmos never lost contact with the outside world, it had entered a rather stable stage of development. In the past 50 years, the sky beyond skies had its fair share of ups and downs, joys and sorrows. Of course, the most attention-grabbing was the emergence of top-notch experts, especially the experts who had ascended to the immortal realm and pushed open the immortal door. The first one to take this step was the world beyond world's northeastern exalt, the Green Sky Mountain's Grave Thunder Palace's Palace Lord Lu Jinggu. Currently, the Green Sky Mountain's Grave Thunder Palace was also a top-notch force in the North Continent. Palace Lord Lu Jinggu was the oldest exalt martial saint in the world beyond worlds. In terms of age, only the Earth exalt, Wang Zhengqing, was older than him among the world beyond worlds 10 exalts. In terms of age, Lu Jinggu was already nearing the end of his lifespan. After all, a martial saint with a lifespan like Wang Zhengqing was a rare exception, especially since the Grave Thunder Palace's lineage's martial arts were ferocious and violent. On the other hand, it was easy to break. Lu Jinggu's natural lifespan was actually slightly shorter than ordinary exalt martial saints. Only, Lu Jinggu's old age made him more experienced. He was always domineering and energetic, which made others forget about his age. However, this old man was nearing the end of his lifespan. It was an undeniable fact. If he couldn't break through, then the day he died of old age was not far away. It would be within the next 100 years. Compared to an immortal realm expert, a martial saint, or even an exalt martial saint's lifespan seemed frail. Most of the time, not only was there a difference in strength, but there was also a huge difference in lifespan. However, after leaving the world beyond worlds, Lu Jinggu had been cultivating quietly. The Green Sky Mountain's Grave Thunder Palace, Remote Cloud Mountain's Clear Light Locale, and Bright Connection Valley were all descendants of the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor's lineage. With Yin Zhaoge and Xuechuqing's help, they were able to communicate with each other. After leaving the Dao universe and entering the awakened sky cosmos, the safety and secrecy of the sky beyond heaven had increased. Not only that, but the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor had also established some connections with the sky beyond heaven. Chapter 1542. In the world beyond worlds that year, the master of Wudong Slope's lineage, Zhuang Shen and Mao Yuanxing, had actually intended for Mao Yuanxing to inherit their lineage's legacy. Still, he had perished unexpectedly afterwards, with the position of chief of Wudong Slope ultimately falling into Zhuang Shen's hands. After that, Zhuang Shen caught up from behind, His strength grew stronger and stronger, and his fame grew greater and greater. The people of the world gradually forgot about what had happened back then. When Zhuangsheng became a martial saint, his personal reputation also reached its peak. Mao Yuansheng, who had once been the most outstanding of his generation in his youth, completely became Zhuangsheng's background. It was not just in the world beyond worlds. In the southern Blazing Heaven territory, and even within Wudong Slope's lineage, Mao Yuansheng kept an increasingly low profile in the following days. Even if Zhuangsheng did not specifically suppress him, he would still keep a distance from him. It was only after Yin Zhaoge had caused Wudong Slope's lineage to suffer grievous casualties and suffer a great blow to their vitality that Mao Yuansheng had emerged once more, aiding Zhuangsheng in reviving Wudong Slope. After Zhuangsheng had challenged Broad Creed Mountain and died beneath Yindi's saber, Mao Yuansheng had succeeded Wudong Slope. With the battle between the Black and White Brocade Emperors having come to an end, the first thing Mao Yuansheng did was to head to ingenious Flying Peak's Red Lotus Cliff to apologize to the Brocade Emperor, Fu Yunqi, also inviting Meng Wan back to Wudong Slope as a guest, expressing her sincere apologies with utmost respect. Although Fu Yunqi was furious that Zhuangsheng had used Meng Wan to disturb his state of mind, since Zhuangsheng himself was already dead, with Fu Yunqi's bearing, it was beneath him to make things difficult for the others of Wudong Slope. Meng Wan similarly did not make things difficult for Mao Yuansheng and Wudong Slope. She returned to the south to sweep the grave of her birth mother, who was also a former disciple of Wudong Slope, Lu Xianting. Afterwards, when they had left the world beyond worlds and entered the sky beyond skies, Meng Wan had frequently visited Wudong Slope as well. However, even then, Mao Yuansheng and Wudong Slope still didn't dare act in the slightest. Even when Mao Yuansheng had successfully broken through from the 9th level of the Martial Saint realm to the Human Exalt realm more than 10 years ago, he had still kept a low profile. However, the brilliance that had been buried under Zhuangsheng's wings in the past had already caused everyone to raise their eyebrows. Under Mao Yuansheng's leadership, Wudong Slope was not anxious or impatient. He carefully taught his disciples and gradually recovered their vitality. Presently, the Wudong Slope had risen once again in the southern continent, becoming a formidable existence that no one in the southern continent could ignore. Mr. Mao is very clear-headed. I believe he won't do anything irrational, Meng Wan said as she left the world-illuminating peak with Tang Yonghao and set out for Golden Court Mountain. All of us know that if Broad Creed Mountain really wanted to hold a grudge, Wudong Slope would have long since ceased to exist. How would there be a day when they would rise again? Meng Wan sighed emotionally. Yet, while Wudong Slope has revived, compared to the current Broad Creed Mountain, it is no different from the light of a firefly contending for glory with the sun and moon. How can they possibly win? It's just that Wudong Slope has a lot of old people. We have to be more vigilant to prevent people from being blinded for a moment. She looked at Tang Yonghao. From this aspect, the Sacred Sung clan has started all over again, its disciples not having any concept of what happened back then. The situation is clearly much better. Tang Yonghao said, if Broad Creed Mountain wholeheartedly wants to suppress them, it would be even more impossible for the Sacred Sung clan to be rebuilt. After a moment of silence, he said, if the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. Most of the time, it's not hatred that tempts people to take risks, but their own desires and ambitions. Meng Wan said, it's not a bad thing to be ambitious, or even have desires and ambitions. Still, we must not lose the big picture for the small. Now that our orthodox Taoism has hope of reviving, with a flourishing atmosphere, we should be united as one. The white-clothed woman said slowly, a snake cannot be without a head. Broad Creed Mountain is strong, and has already established its position as the dragon head of the sky beyond skies. The stronger they are, the stronger the sky beyond skies will be, and the stronger our Taoism will be, and the faster our revival will be. For everyone of the same Taoism, it will be beneficial as a whole. Tang Yonghao gazed into the distance. That's right. My master, Palace Lord Lu, and even Wudong Slope's Chief Mao are all the same. If Taoism as a whole collapses, we will all be affected. For example, Those who are still in the world beyond worlds have all met with a great tribulation. While Master did not explicitly state who the enemy is, that tragic situation is enough to alert everyone in the sky beyond skies. No matter how one looked at it, he had given Golden Court Mountain sufficient face. Also, while his fame was growing by the day, he was still inferior to Yin Zhaoge and Yin Di at the end of the day. Also, he was much more low-key in his daily affairs compared to Yin Zhaoge and Yin Di. Therefore, the main focus of today's celebration would not deviate. The other person who was not so high profile, and whose status was sufficient to not be rude, was Yin Zhaoge, and Su Fei's Grand Master, Broad Creed Mountain's old chief, Yuan Zhengfeng. In terms of seniority with Yin Di and Yin Zhaoge, or in terms of status within Broad Creed Mountain, Yuan Zhengfeng held sufficient weight. Also, his age and cultivation base were both lower than Chao Jie's. However, Yuan Zhengfeng was in secluded cultivation, so it was not convenient for him to come to Golden Court Mountain to congratulate them. Senior brother Tang and fellow Taoists from Golden Court Mountain are too polite. It is us who have troubled you, Xue Fei answered with a smile. Beside him, the other Broad Creed Mountain martial practitioners also returned the greetings of those of Golden Court Mountain. Tang Yonghao looked over and saw a few familiar faces in the crowd. One of them, a cultured and refined youth, cupped his hands towards him. I heard from Taoist Zhang of your sect that Taoist Tang is already close to the late Immortal Bridge stage, the 9th level of the Martial Saint realm. I would like to congratulate you first. I dare not say it at such a close distance. Thank you for your auspicious words, fellow Taoist Feng. Tang Yonghao smiled and returned the greeting. This youth was Feng Moyang, a disciple of Broad Creed Mountain, who was of the same generation as Yin Zhaoge and Su Fei. His status and reputation within Broad Creed Mountain far surpassed the impression outsiders had of him. While he was only a seeing divinity martial saint now, he was one of the few experts of Broad Creed Mountain in the art of alchemy and the cultivation of spirit herbs, being responsible for many matters. Because Chao Jie, the leader of Golden Court Mountain, was fond of alchemy, the entire sect was influenced by him, as there were many who were proficient in this art. Broad Creed Mountain and Golden Court Mountain often communicated in this regard. Therefore, Feng Moyang was very familiar with everyone in Golden Court Mountain and often visited them. As Feng Moyang's cultivation base was lower than Tang Yonghao's, he didn't appear overbearing when he talked about cultivation. Not mentioning Yin Zhaoge, when the Broad Creed Mountain and the Sacred Sun clan had competed against each other in the 8 Extremities world in the past, Tang Yonghao's opponent had been Su Fei, who was right in front of him. Among the geniuses of the same age, the two had once been outstanding. Chapter 1546. When Nie Jingxin was around, it did not affect Bai Tao from taking over the Jade Capital Crag. Now that Nie Jingxin was not around, it was even more so. However, contrary to everyone's expectations, Bai Tao left on his own and took root in the Western continent. As for the reason, perhaps only the person involved knew. Only Bai Tao had a short conversation with his master, Yu Jinbei, before bidding farewell to his master and descending the Jade Capital Crag alone. Until now, no third person knew the content of their conversation. It became a big mystery after the opening of the outer heavens. Within Broad Creed Mountain, there were many differing opinions regarding this. Many people speculated that Bai Tao might have done something wrong, which was why there was no possibility of him inheriting the Jade Capital Crag. However, the Jade Capital Crag would handle the matter internally, and the details would not be made public. This was also the guess of most people in the realm beyond Avalon. In addition, there were also people who believed that Nie Jingxin's sudden rise to power had more or less damaged Bai Tao's morale. Even though Nie Jingxin was not present, Bai Tao still admitted his inferiority. Or perhaps it was exactly the opposite. He wanted to break free from the shadows of the past. So he severed his past thoughts and established the goal of his life and the foundation of his sword Tao. While Broad Creed Mountain's relationship with Jade Capital Crag was even closer than Golden Court Mountain's, they similarly had no idea about this matter, as they could only guess and discuss it in private. However, this did not affect Broad Creed Mountain's interactions with Bai Tao. When the two sides met, Xue Fei and Bai Tao greeted each other first. Behind Bai Tao were his current disciples, as well as the leaders of the other local forces in the west region of the sky beyond heaven. Afterwards, they all went up together to greet the current chief of the Broad Creed Mountain, Su Fei. After greeting each other, both parties walked into the main hall together. Many people had already arrived in the hall. They were seated under the hospitality of Golden Court Mountain's disciples, waiting quietly for the ceremony to begin. Bai Tao's gaze swept over, and he saw his fellow disciple Wang Pu, representing the sword sovereign, Yu Jinbei, to attend the ceremony. When the two sides met, they naturally had to reminisce about the past. "You're about to break through." Bai Tao looked at Wang Pu and sighed. "I'm still not there yet. However, the immortal mortal tribulation is different from the human immortal realm to the true immortal realm. At least there's no risk." Wang Pu shook his head lightly as he looked at Bai Tao. Bai Tao, however, saw through his unfinished intentions and calmly replied, "I'm still not good enough. I'm not even 50% sure." "You're still young. It's fine," Wang Pu said. "Otherwise, outsiders might be able to figure out the time pattern. There's no need." Bai Tao shook his head and said, "First of all, time waits for no man. Our two enemies are currently locked in a fierce battle and can't spare too much energy on our side. It's convenient for us to act now. If we delay for a few more years, who knows when our enemies will call a truce again." This matter was related to the immortal court, and Wang Pu's current cultivation was still a step away from the exalt stage. Therefore, Bai Tao didn't want to reveal everything. His words were rather vague. However, it was enough for Wang Pu, who was helping Yu Jinbei manage the matters of the Jade Capital Crag on a daily basis, to understand what he meant. Almost 50 years. Wang Pu nodded lightly. The great war between the immortal court and the blessed lands of the White Lotus had been going on for many years. The peak of the war could be as short as a few years, or as long as a few decades, and as long as a few decades. Whether or not the war would ease would depend on the specific situation. Counting from the time when Yin Zhaoge had separated from the world beyond worlds, they had already fought for 20 years. After that, due to Mahamayuri's unexpected intervention, the two sides were already close to a truce. However, due to the Tai Nirvana Heavenly Lord and the Humanly Essence Stone's information, the flames of war burned even more intensely until now. Secondly, after we obtained the immortal trapping sword, our enemies didn't pay any more attention to us. This meant that they had already predicted that our art wouldn't be usable for a short period of time, and that it would require a longer period of time before we could use it again. Bai Tao sighed and said, "How can a Dao ancestor's capability be underestimated? With the first time, it can already be calculated that it wouldn't be usable for a short period of time. Even if we can't calculate the exact time of the second time, as long as the second time succeeds, the actual time interval would no longer be a secret." He and Wang Pu were of the same sect. Naturally, Wang Pu wouldn't mind his subtle reminder. Yes. Although it's a brand new art, it still originated from the heavens and earth's great Tao. If we could really find the third sword and wait for the final sword, even if our enemies are currently fighting, they might call a truce and wait for us, said Yin Zhaoge with a smile. Unfortunately, he leaned against the back of his chair and patted his head. The eastern extremity viridescent splendor emperor still perished. Everyone present let out a sigh upon hearing his words. In the past, Yin Zhaoge and the incongruence Divine Mother had jointly released fake news to attract the two heretics. Never would they have thought that the fake news would turn into reality under such a coincidence. They really obtained clues regarding the whereabouts of the Tai Nirvana, Heavenly Lord, the Eastern Extremity Viridescent Splendor Emperor. To Yin Zhaoge and the others, the good news was that the two heretics had indeed started fighting again. This allowed Orthodox Taoism to have more time to rest and have more space to move around. However, there was another bad news. When the results came out, the Tai Nirvana Heavenly Lord, one of the three heavyweights of the Heavenly Court's Divine Palace, and the most ancient heavenly lord, had already perished. In terms of time, it should be around the time of the Great Calamity. This result naturally made everyone in Taoism sigh. At least it proves that the Eastern Extremity Viridescent Splendor Emperor isn't the immeasurable heavenly lord. Lu Jinggu avoided Wang Pu and said to everyone else via sound transmission. Yin Zhaoge and the others nodded in agreement. It also proves that both the fake Taoists and the fake Buddhas view the humanly essenced stone highly. The Brocade Emperor Fu Yunqi also sent a sound transmission. Moreover, the newly obtained fragment requires some time to take effect. Very few items were left behind by the Tai Nirvana Heavenly Lord's place of death. The most eye-catching item was the humanly essenced stone fragment that belonged to the Grand Saint of Nine Spirits. Due to this fragment, an intense war erupted between the Immortal Court and the blessed lands of the White Lotus. The immeasurable Heavenly Lord and the future Buddha personally took action. As the war grew more intense, the Western Pure Lands Orthodox Buddhism and the Astro Mountain Starry Seas demon race joined in as well. In the end, the blessed lands of the White Lotus emerged victorious and obtained the humanly essenced stone fragment. However, this didn't signify the end of the war. On the contrary, the war became even more intense. Especially the immeasurable Heavenly Lord and the future Buddha, the two Tao realm bigwigs. To them, the concept of time had already become blurry. 10,000 years were akin to an instant, and an instant was akin to 10,000 years. However, in the outside world, close to 50 years had already passed. It was precisely because of this that Yin Zhaoge and the others noticed something amiss. Naturally, the future Buddha wouldn't be unable to refine a single humanly essenced stone fragment within 50 years. However, it was clear that he couldn't accomplish it in a short period of time. Under the immeasurable Heavenly Lord's interference, this period of time was extended indefinitely. As a result, he still couldn't succeed even now. As such, the immeasurable Heavenly Lord, who still had hope, continued to fight against the future Buddha and continued to fight for the fragment. Otherwise, Yin Zhongzi, who was a grand heavenly immortal, wouldn't have perished. The higher the level of a cultivator, the clearer they would be able to see the existences that were lower than them. It was as if there were no secrets to speak of. The past could be seen clearly, and the future, though complicated, was relatively clear. However, for those at a higher level, there were naturally fewer valuable items. For example, Yin Zhaoge was currently paying attention to existences like the immortal exterminating sword and the immortal ending sword. It would undoubtedly be extremely difficult to find them. The origin heavenly scripture would trace even the slightest bit of relevant traces and continuously expand, making it impossible for anything to hide. On the other hand, existences like the four immortal exterminating swords would, to a large extent, destroy the traces they left in space and time. If I don't use the origin heavenly scripture as my foundation, the effect would still be lacking. Yin Zhaoge closed his eyes and lightly rubbed his temples. The gloominess within the sanctum gradually faded away, and everything returned to its original state. Time slowly flowed by. Yin Zhaoge's state of mind was at peace. He closed his eyes and rested, until he felt the hustle and bustle outside slowly fading away. After a while, Chao Jie and the others returned to the sanctum. Bai Tao and Lu Jinggu left first, and returned to the western and northern regions respectively. The others would return to the Broad Creed mountain range together with Yin Zhaoge. After the ceremony ended, under Chao Jie's lead, Yin Zhaoge went to the Lord of the Taoist Wei's Tao Arena ruins, which was moved back by the Golden Court Mountain's Grand Master. The ruins had already fused with the Golden Court Mountain itself. It was just a corner of the cave manor, which didn't seem to have anything special about it. However, within Yin Zhaoge's pupils, a green radiance faintly flickered. Within his mind, a scene that was different from the real world appeared. At this moment, Yin Zhaoge felt as if he had jumped out of the river of time and was going against the current. Light shimmered in front of his eyes, with scenes flashing by rapidly. Time seemed to be flowing in reverse, bringing Yin Zhaoge back to the time of the Great Calamity. As the scenery changed, a beautiful treasure mountain appeared in Yin Zhaoge's vision. Golden Court Mountain's Jade House Cave. Yin Zhaoge understood. He knew that this was the Lord of the Taoist Wei's Tao Arena, before the cave manor was destroyed. However, very quickly, the great calamity that Yin Zhaoge had always engraved in his heart arrived. Compared to the Heavenly Court's Divine Palace's martial repository, the scene was much more tragic. The sky seemed to have shattered like porcelain, and the earth seemed to have turned into dust. Although they had nurtured their swords in the past, they were still far away from the virtual immortal realm of five Qis unification. At this moment, it wasn't something that could be created by martial arts, treasures, or pills. Instead, it depended on one's enlightenment and opportunities. Perhaps one could achieve it any time, or it might take a long time. As for the roving Jade Heaven's true immortal experts, Long Shiweji, Gao Shiwebwa, the Tranquil Emperor, and the Liberal Emperor, they had yet to see through the pure profound tribulation. They still needed more training. In the sky beyond skies, the Brocade Emperor, Fu Yinqi, had been studying the art of severing his emotions and parasitism with Yin Zhaoge's help. His previously blurry path had started becoming clearer, giving him hope to climb to a higher realm. However, he still needed time to accumulate if he wanted to succeed. The Astro-Sovereign Chun Xuanzong, the female emperor, Jie Mingkong, and the true immortal Chu Lily were all frozen beneath the Jade Sky Peak. The Sword Sovereign, Yu Jinbei, was at the profound immortal pinnacle realm of four Qis fused aura. However, he was still far away from five Qis unification. From this, one could see how difficult it was to improve in the immortal realm. This was a normal phenomenon. Even if one had the potential and motivation to continue improving, the higher the realm, the more time and energy needed to break through. The closer one was to the Tao realm, the harder it would be. No matter how peerless a genius was, after pushing open the immortal door, he could only try to shorten the time needed or save some STE. However, it was impossible to make it completely non-existent. Some necessary painstaking work still needed time to slowly accumulate. After passing through the Jade Sky Peak, everyone's speed increased again. Fu Yinqi brought Meng Wan and the others back to the ingenious Flying Peak's Red Lotus Cliff, while Wang Pu and the others returned to the Jade Capital Crag. Yin Zhaoge and the others returned to the Broad Creed Mountains, main peak located in the center of the mountain range. After returning to the mountain, they entered the mountain gate. On the mountain road, a group of Broad Creed Mountain martial art practitioners passed by. When they saw Yin Zhaoge, Su Fei, and the others, they immediately bowed. Chief, Senior Apprentice Brother Yen. The leader was a young man who looked to be in his 30s. He had a calm demeanor and a smile on his face. How have you been, Junior Apprentice Brother Lan? We haven't seen each other for some time, said Yin Zhaoge with a smile. He was no stranger to the person in front of him. It was his junior apprentice brother Lan Wenyan, whom he had gotten acquainted with back in the Eight Extremities world. Thank you for your concern, Senior Apprentice Brother Yen. Lan Wenyan smiled as he answered. The next grand tournament is approaching. We need to set up a rule. The immortal trapping sword shook slightly down below, that cyclic heavenly seal fragment shaking alongside it. Chapter 1552. After Yin Zhaoge performed the ritual, radiances were suddenly released from a palace within the immortal court's heavenly palace. Within the palace, the slightly pale percussion heavenly lord, who was originally resting with his eyes closed, immediately opened his eyes and looked in the opposite direction. A young man sat there. He was tall, had 3 heads and 6 arms, and even had a third eye on his forehead. The young man quietly looked at a small bell within the palace. The small bell that resembled a copper bell was currently emitting radiances and shaking lightly. However, no sound was emitted. A talisman was stuck on the bell. Currently, the talisman's patterns were distorting as if they were alive. The heretics have made their move. The young man with 3 heads and 6 arms opened his eyes and said, It seems like they aren't aiming for the immortal ending ancient sword, but the immortal exterminating ancient sword that my master wielded. The percussion heavenly lord asked in a deep voice, Can you find it? If it were that easy, I would have found it long ago. The young man shook his head. Only the other party made their move. That's why I'm able to find it. If you want to find it, try using this bell. You might stand a chance, but it's hard to guarantee anything. The young man glanced at the percussion Heavenly Lord. I know that you've yet to recover from your injuries from the heretics. It's inevitable that you're feeling frustrated. However, our immortal court is currently fighting against the White Lotus evil devils, and we have no time to spare. Don't be impatient and head there alone. The percussion Heavenly Lord's expression sank as he slowly said, You're right. Don't worry, Taoistine. I won't act rashly. However, we can't remain indifferent. Since it's rare for them to come out, we can't let them go so easily. The young man nodded slightly. That's right. However, it's not something that the two of us can handle. After saying that, he extended his hand and pointed towards the small bell. The small bell landed on the ground and entered his hand. Taoistine, your injuries have yet to recover. Let me make a trip there, said the young man. The percussion Heavenly Lord stood up. Thank you, Taoistine. I'll be waiting for your good news. The young man's figure shook and transformed into a stream of light. He exited the immortal court's heavenly palace and headed towards the distance. After traversing through layers of voids, he finally landed in a cosmos. Countless Buddhist lands were connected, and green lotuses bloomed. It was a scene of tranquility and peace. The young man entered one of the Buddhist Pure Lands and arrived in front of a temple. He lowered his head and said, Junior Yin Jiao, I would like to meet the Dipankara ancient Buddha. A Buddhist Banti in front of the temple put his palms together and said, Yin Sui Heavenly Lord, Sui Heavenly Sui the god of Tai Sui, who was once on duty in the Heavenly Court's divine palace, was now the Heavenly Lord of Tai Sui, Yin Jiao. He walked into the temple, Heavenly, Golden Buddha within the Kara Buddha divine palace, and had a Sunli Jiao, Dean Young divine radiated a light. From the Buddha within the temple, the divine light divine radiated Young Buddha. Indeed, the ancient Buddha, one sek Jiao Dieted Buddha, and said in Yang A, 1-1. Yin Jiao held the small bell in his hand, which was still shaking soundlessly. Ancient Buddha, this is the immortal exterminating sword that my master wielded in the past. Although it's still hard to understand the other party's method, the general idea is gradually becoming clear. It's to use the sword to find someone. However, to find someone, there should be some initial clues that can be relied on. The Dipankara ancient Buddha said, Your master's cyclic heavenly seal was shattered in the past. One of its fragments fell into the hands of the Broad Creed Mountain by chance. If the immortal ending sword doesn't have any better clues, the second method of searching for the sword will most likely land on the immortal exterminating sword. The ancient Buddha can see 10,000 miles, said Yin Jiao. The Dipankara ancient Buddha smiled and said, I'm just observing from the side. Speaking of which, the three clear lineage is truly full of talents. This newly created method is truly unique. Yin Jiao smiled faintly and did not reply. The Dipankara ancient Buddha flicked his finger lightly. After a while, a green lotus descended outside the temple. Golden lights flickered on the green lotus. Go ahead. Act according to the situation. The Astro Mountain's starry seas and the White Lotus heretics won't just sit and watch, said the Dipankara ancient Buddha. After Yin Jiao left the temple, the Dipankara ancient Buddha sat in silence and smiled. His gaze pierced through the layers of void and looked into the distance, as if there was no focus. The fate has already been decided. The time has yet to come. At the same time, in the blessed lands of the White Lotus, the sword master of the six paths, Chu Su sat within his Buddhist kingdom. At this moment, another White Lotus suddenly descended. Chu Su opened his eyes and looked up. The lotus platform spreading Buddha is here. Is it because the Taoism heretics are searching for the sword again? The lotus platform spreading Buddha on the White Lotus nodded and said, There's news from the Astro Mountain's starry seas. Chu Su nodded and stood up. The Buddha and the boundless evil devil are in a heated argument. However, he still paid attention to this matter and passed down a decree. The lotus platform spreading Buddha said, The boundless evil devil seems to have other intentions regarding the immortal exterminating four swords. You have to be careful. Chu Su nodded. Namo Mithriya Buddha, this disciple shall obey your decree. He left the blessed lands of the White Lotus and headed towards the Astro Mountain's starry seas. Passing through layers of void, he arrived at the Astro Mountain's starry seas where the demon race lived in seclusion. After entering, Chu Su headed towards the majestic Grand Plainness heaven. Although there were many worlds within the Astro Mountain's starry seas, most of them were filled with demonic chi and black winds. However, the Grand Plainness heaven had rays of light and clouds revolving around the cosmos, making this place look like a paradise. Even if there were bloody and evil demonic winds rushing over from the outside, they would immediately retract upon entering this place. Chu Su entered the Grand Plainness heaven and looked up. He could vaguely see the existence of a palace beyond the 9 heavens. However, it seemed unreachable and unapproachable. He knew that it was the legendary broad plains of Chestnut. Beyond the 33 heavens, the Grand Plainness heaven, the broad plains of Chestnut. That was Empress Wa's residence in the past. After Empress Wa transcended, the Empress Wa's palace disappeared, and the Eastern Emperor's palace was established. Chu Su lowered his head and retracted his gaze. He traversed through the Grand Plainness heaven and quickly arrived in front of a spiritual mountain. A Taoist child welcomed him at the entrance. "Sword Son of the 6 Paths, please follow this child. Master is waiting for you." Chu Su followed this Taoist child who had transformed into a human and entered the spiritual mountain, arriving at the peak. There was a towering ancient tree at the peak. As he walked towards the tree's peak, he saw an old man sitting in a lotus position. Upon seeing this old man, Chu Su immediately bowed. "This junior greets the Taoist monarch." "Look over there," said the old man. Chu Su looked over and saw a piece of black stone burning within golden red flames, emitting a soft sizzling sound. He took a closer look and felt that the irregularly shaped black stone was like a large seal, with only a small part of it left. "This is..." Chu Su seemed to have understood something. The old man nodded. "That's right. This was left behind after Guangchengzi's cyclic heavenly seal was shattered. The 3 clear lineage intends to retrieve the immortal exterminating 4 swords. From the looks of it, the 3rd sword they are eyeing is most likely the immortal exterminating sword, and not the immortal ending sword. He intimidated the Western heretics and protected them. He has great merits and I've always admired him," said Chu Su. "If I tell him the news, De Peng might still rush back." The red-robed old man smiled and said, "However, let's not talk about running back and forth for now. Right now, there are other candidates in the Grand Essence Heaven who are quite suitable. They are suitable for the prime clear immortal exterminating 4 swords." As he spoke, a ball of flames lit up on either side of him, as if 2 doors had been opened. A voice quickly came from the door on the left. "Tao Lord, what can I do for you?" The voice from the door on the right asked. "Is there news about the 2 ancient swords, Celestial Extermination or Celestial Extermination?" "The Zhuxian ancient sword has some movements." The red-robed old man replied with a smile. The 2 gates formed by the flames swayed slightly, and then both sides said in unison, "Very good." The gates formed by the flames disappeared. The red-robed old man said to Chu Su, "You 2 should head out first. If things don't go your way, then we'll discuss further." "I understand." Chu Su stood up and transformed into a white lotus. He floated down from the ancient tree, went straight up the green clouds, and exited the Grand Essence Heaven. At the same time, 2 demonic winds rose within the Grand Essence Heaven. Initially they were calm. However, the moment they exited the Grand Essence Heaven, they instantly became ferocious. The White Lotus and the 2 demonic winds coexisted peacefully. After meeting each other, they flew within the Astro Mountain's starry sea. Finally, they exited the Astro Mountain's starry sea and disappeared within the void's boundless outskirts. Within the awakened sky cosmos, within the sky beyond skies. On the broad Creed Mountain, Yen Zhaoge and Feng Yinxing arrived at the Pill Hall at the peak of the mountain. Within the Pill Hall, the North Ocean clone, who was originally sitting in a lotus position with his eyes closed, opened his eyes and stood up. Beside him, a furry ball with black and white colors was lying on the ground, dozing off. A woman beside him was stroking the furry ball, with a satisfied expression. "Young master, young madam." The woman was Xiao Ai. When Yin Zhaoge and Feng Yinxing entered, She turned around and greeted them with a smile. The furry ball moved a little and stretched his body. With a pair of huge dark circles under his eyes, he grinned towards Yin Zhaoge and Feng Yunsheng, seemingly having a silly look on his face. After lightly patting Pan Pan's head, Yin Zhaoge said, "Invite Mother over. It's safer for her to oversee this place." In the current sky beyond skies, there was only his mother, Xue Chuqing, who could rival Yin Zhaoge in terms of formations within the same realm. Over the past few years, the sky beyond skies had improved in many aspects. Demonic bloodline cultivators could also be considered a naturally derived lineage. Therefore, Yin Zhaoge hadn't altered the environment of the floating life world. If external influences caused the demonic bloodline cultivators' legacies to gradually fade away, they would still be naturally eliminated. In places like the sky beyond skies, there were more high-grade spirit beasts and demonic beasts. To the mainstream demonic bloodline cultivators of the floating life world, it was also a blessing. They were all gradually strengthening the Bright Connection Valley. Now that the Bright Connection Valley was under the care of Su Yun and the others, Xue Chuqing didn't have to worry about it. Upon receiving Xiao Ai's news, he immediately rushed over to the Broad Creed Mountain. After Yin Zhaoge met up with his mother, and met up with Su Fei, who had arranged the sect's internal affairs, they left the sky beyond skies together. Remember the mobile website, M. With their current cultivation and strength, they were extremely sensitive to the changes in the void. They could vaguely feel that they were gradually approaching the border of the 9 underworlds by following the guidance of the talisman and the immortal trapping sword. Although it's hard to tell directions in the void, the 9 underworlds shouldn't have invaded this universe, right? Yin Zhaoge asked with some uncertainty. The known land of Tranquil Stream is very far away from here. After pondering for a moment, Gao Qingxian answered, "If a grand heavenly realm devil lord were to take action, he could corrode a portion of the void and transform it into a devilish domain. However, if the 9 underworlds weren't connected afterward, the devilish domain might gradually dissipate and degenerate into the land of tranquil streams. In the future, it might even revert back to the void of the universe. Only it would be very barren." Yin Zhaoge narrowed his eyes. However, if the bones of a great devil were buried here, it might exist forever. If a devilish domain was formed, the Grand Heavenly Realm, or Grand Virtual Realm experts, would be able to discover it from afar. Xue Fei frowned. If a great devil was proficient in concealment, its miraculous abilities wouldn't dissipate even after its death. As such, it would be very hard to discover it. Yin Zhaoge said, "Even if a Grand Heavenly Realm expert were to pass by, it would be hard to notice it. One would have to get very close to it to discover it." They were able to notice it from afar because of Yin Zhaoge's secret art, using the immortal trapping sword. In other words, the devilish domain might contain traces of the immortal extermination sword, or the Lord of Broad Accomplishment, which was why they were able to notice it from afar. During the Great Calamity, the Lord of Broad Accomplishment Grand Master was nearby, and fought against the 9 underworld's great devils, said Xue Fei slowly. They looked at each other and frowned. Currently, they were very sensitive towards the 9 underworlds. The cyclic heavenly seal shattered, and the Lord of Broad Accomplishment Grand Master remained hidden throughout the ages. "I'm afraid that the situation isn't looking good." Yin Zhaoge's expression turned solemn. "However, if the Lord of Broad Accomplishment Grand Master met with misfortune, where's the immortal extermination sword now? We have to be more cautious. However, no matter what, we have to investigate it first." Gao Qingxian looked at the immortal trapping sword in her palm. Yin Zhaoge and Xue Fei nodded in agreement, and the group continued forward. After a while, everyone's heart jolted slightly. They stopped and looked around. Yin Zhaoge nodded towards Gao Qingxian. Gao Qingxian wielded the immortal trapping sword and slashed forward. Dark red sword lights instantly rose and fell everywhere. Suddenly, a wound seemed to have been slashed open by the immortal trapping sword.